I'm a poet from Detroit, and my own private Idaho helped me identify with the good, bad, and gray elements of young gay life. River exemplifies the beautiful lost rebel whose purity is misplaced from trauma, the sad and relatable story of gays in America. He was a more orphaned and wildly innocent James Dean, but more rough and street-tested, exemplifying the post-punk grunge era in a timeless way. Gus and River gave the internally wounded streetwalker a beautiful face and magnetic melancholy, something all young gay men desire to be and lust after. It's one of our many double-edged swords. Even with the lofty Shakespearean references lost on most viewers, the film gave me a relatable view into a world I understood and admired. It kindled my adventurous side and grounded my morality. I fondly look at the movie as a touchstone in my life, as an erotic and dreamy artifact of the exploration of my own youth and identity. Of course, our identity changes throughout our lives, but impressionable works of art always remain links to the people we've been. And my own private Idaho reminds me of my younger and more vulnerable years.
Love is Love, My Own Private Idaho turns 30. Welcome to this very special podcast episode here at LaunchLeft. I'm Rain Phoenix. I wept when I watched and listened to the testimonials sent in by those of you who heard the call on social media. Thank you so much for your stories. My only regret is we could not use all of them in this episode. To hear how River impacted your lives, to hear how this film impacted your lives, and to hear how important it is to create more art for the left of center artist, for the outlier, for the outsider. Your testimonials contextualize even more to me the importance of a space that helps you when you feel lonely or helps you through grief. That is the impact of art and intention, of art and activism. And when I think about My Own Private Idaho, after 30 years, that impact, that a collective of artists came together to make this outsider film, this film made by an openly gay director that was unafraid of failure. As a matter of fact, to hear Laurie Parker speak during one of LaunchLeft's campfire conversations on Discord, which please come join us there. We're there every Friday at 6 p.m. PST. You can find out how on our Twitter at LaunchLeft. Laurie Parker shared that one of the things Gus said when she asked what he wanted to do next was he said, I want to fail at this project, My Own Private Idaho, or something. I'm paraphrasing. Every crew member that I've spoken to and every cast member, it was such a powerful collective of artists from across mediums coming together to tell this story that now, you know, to hear a testimonial from a 16-year-old that shows the longevity of that kind of pure intention and pure art, all the confluence of events that made Mopey possible in 1990 and 1991 when it came out. We are seeing the effect of that cause now. So really, I see it as this powerful cause and effect story, and the outcome is still reverberating. I hope you dig this episode.
We knew that he was in the chateau. We were tipped off. And we were like, we got to give him the script. Because Iris was just like, no. And like, so we found out the room, and we just went and knocked on the door, and you answered. And we're like, somehow there was a note and everything explained it, because he called back. And right in that same period, he gave me I lived just down the street near the actor's studio. Mm-hmm. Like I was in an apartment behind the Mondrian. Mm-hmm. So I was just really like down the street. And I remember him either coming down there or like it was at the chateau. And he always wanted to play the recordings because they were recording in the studios. So he had like the cassette. So he said, let me play our new song. And he cranked it up so loud, it was like, bah! like super loud.
But what was
wasn't as young as he was.
I remember him coming back to Florida and telling me about you and saying that I had to read the script, but that he wanted me to see the movie, the previous movie
Mala
Noche. And then I read the script, and I was like...
Well, the script was really weird.
Yeah.
Although probably it was more fun than like a regular Hollywood script.
Oh my God,
Because it had bigger letters.
Did River...
Also, he just loved you.
Did River help get Keanu in the project?
No, and Keanu was separate. Like our deal was, the whole deal with River and Keanu was that I had written that script after Drugstore Cowboy. And the choice was either to like play the game, quote unquote game, of the real game was like you could do an action movie. That was where the real money was. But action movies were still back then like separate from drama. Mm-hmm. And drama was still what like the major studios were doing. Like they did action and they spent more money on action and paid people more on action, but they still did like On Golden Pond and all that. So I didn't want to go that directly into like the action world, but I wasn't like interested in like their ideas of like, or the things that they were doing, which were dramas. I should really not play any of this game, and I should write just what I want. This is my one chance, I thought. I always think, every movie you always go like, oh,
I'll never work again.
Yeah, exactly. And so we thought, well, we'll just get, a small amount of money. That way, like we can make the movie we want, and we'll cast. Mike Parker will be Mike Waters, and Rodney will be Keanu's part. Oh, it's Scott. It says Mike and Scott.
Right.
And we had it kind of loosely set up with our small group. Oh, and there was a friend of mine who had somebody that had money that was going to finance the movie. And so we were kind of all set. And then we said, well, now that we're all set, we should just check and see if our favorite actors would actually be willing, just in case. So it was like an in case thing. So that's what we were doing with like.
And how did you get the script to Keanu? Yeah.
Keanu, his agents were like, yeah, just send it over. And they were like, they just sent it to him. And he came over. And he was like, great, I'd love to.
Wow.
And so he said yes.
Was River confirmed at the time, or was Keanu first?
No, they didn't know at the time that each other were being approached. And we weren't, the only way we were talking to River was with Iris. And Laurie would call me and say, you won't believe what Iris told me. She would just like swear at them on the phone.
I will rip off your head and shit down your neck.
Said stuff like that. And like,
she was amazing.
I said, okay. And then at the same time, somebody said that River was in the chateau. And I was encouraged. He said, you got to just drive it over. And I was like, okay. And so we just did that.
So I obviously, if you handed it to me, I must have given it to him, and then he called you.
Then you could have like thrown it away.
Yeah, good job, sis.
I don't think I would have done that, but I don't even remember that. So I appreciate you for the memories.
But then they figured out somehow that they were both being offered this. And River, I remember, he would call me and talk to me for like hours on the phone from Florida, and I would be in that place. I remember being in my room. I was co-renting a little apartment in back of the Mondrian, so I'd be in there and talking to him, and he would go, do you know that Keanu and I are related? And I'm like, you are? You're related? And he goes, well, not like blood related, but we're related. And I'm like, how? And you're like, oh, the movie that I Love You to Death. You did the movie together. And he's like, yeah. Did you know that? Like, because he's paranoid. He's like, like wants to know I'm playing them both. And I'm like, I didn't know that, but like, it's cool that you were, that you worked together before. I was like, oh, yeah, good. And eventually I realized I needed to go see him in person because he was too, like, he's talking to a disembodied voice, like this person that he can't imagine. So I flew to your place right around the time I'd gone to New York. And on the way back to LA, I went through Florida.
What was your first impression having come to the ranch? And what did he seem like? different than most actors you'd
Yeah,
met?
he did, because he seemed, he seemed both sophisticated and unsophisticated at the same time. So that was kind of an interesting. I think your whole family is, because of your moving and because of your installation and because of your histories, you may successfully have been or had been raised disconnected from a lot of American influence. So that was happening. So you could see there's a really an original personality when you're talking to this person. That's something that I couldn't place. I wouldn't be able to place if asked.
It's like both raised by wolves and able to integrate.
But also there was certain types of sophisticated imagination. And then he would later on, we talked about other things. So he would tell me things like, I didn't know what a joke was until I was 9. He was in school, and somebody told a joke, and then kids laughed, but he didn't laugh because he didn't understand the form.
Wow.
So there were things like that he would tell you, and I'd always think, oh, well, that's an example of how original, he was. He was, humor was not for jokes. It was more to for true humor in life, as opposed to a stand-up joke, which I thought was interesting. But there was lots of that kind of stuff. I wasn't there, but there was an article that I read where somebody had mentioned General MacArthur in passing, and they were on a set, and they had said something about General MacArthur because it had something to do with their scene, and River was like, "Who's that?"
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh, another example of he didn't learn generals or army stuff or war stuff."
Yeah, who is that?
Hi, my name is Reed Gill, and I'd like to share my experience I had with the movie My Own Private Idaho. So this is truly one of the best movies I've ever seen in my entire life, and the reason I say that is because I lost my dad when I was 12 years old, and I'm currently 16 years old, and I feel like his death hasn't really hit me yet and affected me. And just seeing Mike in search of an end to his numbness and emptiness and him longing for a relationship that's gone just really speaks out to me. And just the fact that I'm 16 and this movie came out 30 years ago just shows how powerful River's acting is and how many lives he can touch and affect. And happy 30th. I love you, My Own Private Idaho.
My Own Private Idaho has been in my life since a few years after it was released, actually. It started like I said, my love for writing. It also was my introduction to new queer cinema. And I basically consumed everything that I can get my hands on after that, from all of the great independent queer filmmakers of the 90s, which there were so many, and that movement was just incredible. And again, like I said, it opened my eyes to sexuality. It started me just realizing, oh, there are queer people out there. And it was a big part of my own coming out when I came out to my family as bisexual when I was 17. So, and I'm not really sure if I would have found that community that I ended up then finding actually on the internet and fandom if I hadn't seen My Own Private Idaho when I did, and if it hadn't caused this kind of spiral of creativity and passion for cinema and passion for acting, passion for writing. It was really all that movie. I always think about it when I think about kind of who I am today and what my interests are. There's only one thing that I can point back to, and it's My Own Private Idaho.
Well, Mike Parker, it's only been 30 years since I've seen you.
It feels like a lifetime, but yet at the same time, just like no time at all.
I know that you had a difficult childhood, a lot of trauma, abuse, depression. You were homeless for a time or unhoused for a time, doing sex work to survive. How, was meeting Gus and making this film therapeutic for all of that? Did it have a therapeutic element to it in telling this story?
and thinking about it at the time, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have known that. I didn't know that at the time. It was more as I got older and started really had enough time, enough separation to be able to kind of look back on it and see it for what it was, and then it became therapeutic. How, I don't know exactly. Because I was telling myself, I could have ended up in a million different places in a million different ways, and this is what I ended up with, and thought about how amazing that was, and how, I don't know, cosmic almost. It's like I couldn't believe where it had taken me, because I had many friends who had ended up in many, many different places, much darker places than even I had gone, and then look where I was. I was able to have these experiences and wonderful stuff, and it could go along with trauma and stuff. So I guess it was therapeutic in that I got to do some pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Out of my experiences. I don't know, just, there I was.
You are Mike Parker. You are the Mike that River's character was modeling his character after. Is that right? You and with that, was he a big collaborator? Like, did he ask you a lot of questions and go to the places you went to and try to get into character that way by spending time with you? Is that your memory of it?
Yeah, he certainly did. We had initially, when I had first met him, we actually had some time to actually sit and talk. I remember I had spoken to someone, but we had went up to a park that kind of overlooks the whole city, and we just kind of talked about some of my childhood, what my parents were like, what my home life was like. And then, then we went down into Old Town, and I showed him some of the corners we'd stand on. Just sort of what we would do, how we would flag down people, where where they were, and how to do that. So yeah, and wow. He was a very big collaborator. Anytime that he was able to spend with me, we're busy and everything, but
right.
Very, very inquisitive, and but very sensitive about it at the same time as well. That I'll always remember. He was very, very sensitive about the way he approached asking about it and stuff. So it was very human.
Can you tell me a little bit of the story about shooting with River and Keanu near your mom's work, and and then how you went to visit with them after that?
That was really cool. That was a really great memory. We had already been working on the set for a couple of weeks, and my mom had been hearing about it, and obviously was very proud and excited. And it just so happened that we were shooting about 4 blocks away from where she worked downtown at an office building, and she was just passing by to go to lunch. It wasn't even sort of a pre-planned thing. She just walked up, and there she was, and she saw me. She's like, "Okay, I see these film trucks, and I see all this going on. What's going on?" And she comes and she walks down, and she sees me in the window. I'm standing in like a snack bar or something like that, acting like I'm selling stuff to River's character. And she got to watch the whole filming and all the takes. She stayed there. I think she took an extra long lunch. So she saw all that. And then I remember later on that day, we all just piled in a van. And no, actually, that was a different day. Excuse me. We piled in a car. I was with River and Keanu, and he wanted to see my house, my childhood house, or at least one of them, because we moved around periodically. But yeah, we just kind of showed up unannounced. And we came in, and my mom was like, "Is that who I think that is on my front porch?" Yeah. So that was really fun. She handled it very well, though. But yeah, we came in, and I introduced them, and we talked for a little while, and it's just funny how, and they put her at ease too. It was a really very cool memory. And even my mom was put at ease. They're such nice young men. So it was such a great memory.
Oh, so that's cool. Sweet. I just want to clarify that you are not narcoleptic. Is that right? That was
I am not.
Fiction addition to the character. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, you bet. Now, when I think of the character, I think of the search for home, the search for something bigger, for an acceptance, It was the search for acceptance and love. I think it was capturing that spirit. I think
Absolutely.
When we think about his portrayal of anything remotely to do with me, it would be this sense of finding home, finding a place, love and acceptance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what we're all searching for always, right?
Right, you
in
bet.
a way. Yeah,
You bet.
everyone wants to feel that warmth and joy of home.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to ask for another story. I heard that there was a story about River and you on a shopping day, and when you all went out and gave to unhoused population, you fed them. Is that right? What was that all about?
Yeah, that was we were just kicking it at the house today. It was a day off from filming, and we had all piled into the van. I think it was I forget who was driving, Matt Ebert, I think he was driving. Yeah, and we just we drove. He goes, "Where's the nearest natural food store?" So we drove to Macadam. It was called Nature's Grocery, and we bought what I thought was a very large amount of food for us, just having something to eat when we got home. We piled it all in after we got it all in, and then we stopped by the house, and he took out one sack and had somebody bring it inside, and then we got back in the van, and then we went down into Old Town. And because I didn't know what we were doing, I had no idea. I'm just going along for the ride at this point. So we get down into Old Town, and he just gets out of the car and just starts passing it out to everybody. As they were going by, people were going, "Whoa, what?" And nobody recognized him or anything like that. He just started passing it out, going up and down the street, and people were lining up. And it was a pretty amazing dream, a pretty amazing memory. I loved it.
Wow, that's so cool. Well, I mean, it's so interesting to think about, all of you really kind of incubating in that space together to make this film. It was like a couple months, I think, or not even, of shooting. There's just such a small group of people really living this fiction realness and how without that experience for all of you, life would have been different. Like how each experience and each moment that we have shapes us, right, moving forward. And that film, that moment in time, that set off a kind of trajectory for everyone that would have been different had it not been made. And I even think of outside of the people in that space and that small incubated group of people, the world at large, the film itself really was like a window into a population of people that weren't being represented in film. You've turned 21 right after the film wrapped. Is that right? You turned 21? Yeah, that's wild. You just 21.
We actually wrapped in Seattle, the filming in Seattle, on at least my part of it, on December 8th, on my 21st birthday was the wrap. I was done with the film.
Wow.
And that was crazy. And I live just about 2 miles up the street, so up in Capitol Hill District, and I walked from the set to home, and it was the most amazing feeling ever. That's actually one of the biggest memories I have from working on the film, just taking it all in on that 2 mile walk, just thinking about what had just happened, what had happened over the last couple of months, how special and magical that was. And I couldn't help but thinking to myself that this is going to be really important. There's something really special about what just happened. It's bigger than having a dream come true and being able to be in a film with River and to be to have the acting experience and to do that, because it's something that I've wanted since I was a child. But that aside, it was even more so in that I felt like something really magical had just happened. Like we had said something that there was going to be a real message there, and I was so proud to have who was giving that message be the ones giving it. And I remember just how that felt. I had goosebumps, walking all the way home, and I felt very serene. I just felt like, wow, this is really going to mean something someday. this was gonna speak to a lot of different people on a lot of different levels, and I thought in a positive way that it did. So my biggest takeaway and my biggest memory is probably the day walking home after that, just marinating and all that, and just being so proud of what had just happened, and being able to spend that time with your brother, and to live together and to be a part of that process and be a part of the magic, and just being real. It's an irreplaceable memory, and very humbling, and very, very beautiful.
Wow, you're 50 now, so you're like, River would have been 50 this past year. Actually, he just would have turned 51. And you're a father, is that right? You're a father?
Yeah, I'm a father. I'm a father of 3, you bet.
Wow, so cool.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like, looking back, like imparted lessons on your life and that it changed you in a way? And do you have any advice for, young unhoused people who, are turning to sex work to survive? Is there anything from that experience you can share as an adult now?
I think the best thing that I could probably share is for anybody who's doing that is to never stop reaching out. It's very lonely, it's very gritty. It's never mind how dangerous it can be and all that, but especially coming now that I have children, that changed my entire mindset on my past and where I came from and what I chose. I mean, when we are faced with childhood trauma and things like that, it's really, really hard to dictate exactly what your reaction is going to be to that, and what it is that you're going to go out and try to find. And if you're feeling like you need to leave the situation that you're in, always try to reach out. Try to reach out to things and people that are safe, as best as you possibly can. And I cannot downplay anymore the power of communication and connection with people that we trust. That's easier said than done in a lot of these cases. Because there's a lot of wreckage and a lot of damage that these people go through, and they are underrepresented, and they are not given the tools at a young age to cope with a lot of different things. So we turn to things like sex work and stuff like that. I turn to that for survival. But if there's any advice I would give to somebody who is doing that or considering that, is to reach out and form connections with people that you trust. Always, just make connection. It's so powerful, that community. That would be the best. That's what I would want for my children if they were ever faced with something like that. Reach out. That's best advice I could give.
That's great advice. I think the importance of community in any situation, it's like knowing you're not alone is so important, and it's where the safety is. Do you think things have changed, since then in terms of culturally? Has it changed for young people, the way that they interrelate with family and in regard to identifying as queer or rejected somehow? Do you think that's changed, like in terms of the dominant, social paradigm that we're in? Like, how are things different now?
I do think it's changed. I do think we've entered an age where it's, we still unfortunately have to deal with, I don't want to use the word indifferent and homophobic things, but I think that we're in an age now where it's a lot more accepted. I think that we're now in an age where children or young people in general are made to be able to feel comfortable more than it used to be to be who they are, to express who they are, and to be able to talk about that and explore. So I do feel that there has been a bit of a shift, but unfortunately, we still have to deal with some elements that still don't feel and that's unfortunate. But yeah, to answer your question, yeah, I do think it is shifted. I think young people, especially, are now in a position where they feel a little more empowered. They feel a little more comfortable in being who they are. I mean, at least that's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And I can see it in my own children too. They ask questions and they're allowed to be able to express and to have their own ideas about that and their own feelings about that. So I credit going through all that in my experiences and being able to answer those questions for my kids, and objectively and as somebody with experience. So I feel very grateful that I'm able to answer those questions for them. So I think as the generations go on, if more and more kids are have people in their lives who will do that for them, the more that paradigm will shift even more.
Yeah. When things aren't hidden, there's more chance for understanding, I think, for sure. And that was actually the last question I really wanted to ask you is what do you wish for your children, as we're 30 years later, what do you see? What is your wish for them?
No, I wish for them to know that they are loved, to know that they have a place, to know that they always have a voice, whether that be within their own family, and that their opinion and their feelings matter, and that even if you are shut down in any way, in any form, just know that you are right in how you feel, and that speaks to me. Talking about community and making connections with people that you trust talking to. So cling to those, because in this life you are going to come up against people who will try to knock you down, people who will try to keep you down. But just to stay strong in your conviction and know that you are worth it, and know that you are loved, and know that your feelings matter. That's what I want for my kids, to know that, to always know that, and that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to tell somebody, hey, I'm not doing so good right now. That it's so important that you reach out if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling indifferent to a situation, if you don't understand what's going on. It's okay to ask.
Beautiful.
That's what I want for my children. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Karina Haywood, and I'm here to share with you my story about my own private Idaho and its impact on me, and also my experience going to the Hollywood premiere in 1991. I was 16 years old at the time, and I got to go because my mother's boyfriend had association with Film Forum. He was an experimental filmmaker in the 70s, so they gave him some tickets to the premiere. More importantly, I think, is what the film really meant to me at the time. I think it laid the groundwork for later what became my life in San Francisco in the 90s, where I felt that we were all like a bunch of misfits, but we took care of each other. And it was already like that growing up, but I didn't have my own template for that. And then in that movie, I really felt like that was what was being presented, that it was okay to be different, and it was okay to love each other however we knew how. Speaking of that, the relationship between River and Kanner's characters in the film, being in love with your best friend that way. I was in love with my best friend in high school, and I didn't have words for it. I didn't know how to explain it. And after the movie, I remember just saying I'm in love with her, and knowing that she couldn't be in love with me, but that was okay, that was the way it was. And it was my tragic love story. So that was all right. Those were the two things that I got from that movie. I really felt seen, and I felt represented, as a queer youth at the time. Really validated, that we belonged somewhere. the people that didn't fit in other places. So that's how I still think back on that, on that film in that way. And it's movies like that and art like that, music, all that helps us feel not as alone in the world. And even like what I do, I make hats, and I hope to present something for people that they feel that they can wear no matter where they are on the spectrum of gender or gender nonconforming. And I think of my hats as being gender neutral or gender free, or there's so many terms, but I hope to bring the way that I feel about myself, and that I'm comfortable with myself, and I want to kind of like give that as a gift to other people. All of that, I think, kind of relates to this piece of art that we are celebrating. So yeah, thank you for letting me share my story, and I hope it makes sense, and thank you very much.
Hi, my name's Thailand. I'm from London and Brighton in the UK. I saw the post on LaunchLeft's page saying to like submit what My Own Private Idaho means to me or to you. It was a serendipitous moment because I'd recently been writing a list of things that make me feel like me, or things that I need to get back in touch with to make me feel like me again. And the top of that list is always My Own Private Idaho. I have to watch that movie to like reset myself or recalibrate myself into remembering who I am. The time that I saw it came at a really crucial point in me like figuring out who I am. I moved away from home to go to university, and at that point was not like totally like living like my truth as like a totally queer person and feeling like my coolest, like most confident, natural self or anything. I hadn't reached that point yet, but watching that movie definitely was like a step in me understanding myself a bit better, or at least owning myself a lot better. And like one part especially like was the fashion that I definitely tried to emulate. One of the first pieces of clothing that I ever bought for myself was this jacket that I was trying to find a replica essentially of the jacket that Mike or River wore in the film. This jacket, like, I don't know, yeah, whenever I wore it I felt really cool. It was the first piece of clothing that made me feel like I stood out. The scene around the campfire is a really poignant scene for me because it's more so the part where he's talking about feeling like he's still a well-adjusted person despite, not having a typical family upbringing. He knows he's not at fault for circumstances that are beyond his control, and he's content with who he is despite the dire circumstances that he was even in that moment. And that I find really uplifting. I'm sorry, I'm rambling. This video is probably way too long. Don't even know if you'll watch all of it, but like, I feel like I had to do this. I don't normally do things like this, but I felt like I had to do it because, yeah, serendipity, and I want to honor that part of me.
Rain called me and informed me that My Own Private Idaho was hitting 30 years since its release. I did marvel at that, and I also noticed that without the loss of River, we probably would not have done this because River died and because we lost him. It becomes part of the impetus to remember. And he really was the heart of that movie. We started brainstorming, thinking about what we could do to celebrate 30 years of My Own Private Idaho. And one thing that I really did not want to have a nostalgia fest over it. I really wanted to look at it more as kind of a legacy. Gus was the first, so-called openly gay director to be making mainstream films with movie stars, and that featured really complex characters with all the dimensions, positive, negative, in between. When a queer person is, making art, they're not making a representation of queerness. They're just making art, but it's infused with their identity. Idaho was one of the first films that was really like that. We started thinking about how queer representation has changed over the 30 years and what is left yet to change. And we wanted to do some forward-thinking work. And so we thought of some of the music that's in the film, especially the music that features the customers of the sex workers that were played by River and Keanu in the story. The two most memorable of those are Dare Adler, the Sitting on a Bullet sequence with Udo Kier, which is a complete classic of 80s camp, and then the Daddy Carroll sequence featuring Mickey Cotrell, dressed to the nines, wearing a fedora, picking up what they called a rent boy on the street and bringing him upstairs and having him fulfill his fetish. When we were filming the Daddy Carroll sequence, Mickey Cotrell just sort of spontaneously burst into dance. It was very whimsical and hilarious. We thought about how we might cover that. And LaunchLeft is an organization that is dedicated to artists helping artists and has recently been focusing on some queer artists. We wanted My Own Private Idaho, the celebration Mopey 30, to have something to do with celebrating queer representation in the media. So we wanted to bring in a young queer artist to cover the Deep Night song. And Rain asked Caroline Kingsbury, when you hear her cover, it's kind of like unbelievable that she just whipped that out. It was so deep and beautiful and relevant and moving the way that she performs the song. I wanted to do something. Also found out that Mickey Cotrell, who played the original character, is in the motion picture Film and Television Retirement Fund residence, which is in Woodland Hills, California. And it just seems like a very rich and wild location. I wanted to see that. And also reconnect with Mickey. So we sort of brought the two things together, a little profile of Mickey and also an interview with him about, I think the key words were eroticism and tenderness. And somehow Caroline channeled eroticism and tenderness and longing in her rendition of the song. And we were able to do our best to capture that visually.
Well, River was not supposed to speak in the scene. He had no dialogue. And he automatically started speaking, just extempore. These words started falling out of his mouth. I had a crush on River anyway. That was not hard to do for a gent of my persuasion. Oh, the dance. That just happened. I mean, it was not a part of the original script. I just listened to the music and it made me dance. I always think of myself as a dancer, somehow. The whole world made me dance. And now I can't dance anymore. I've danced my last dance. There was an atmosphere that was very romantic. I was sort of captured in the web of River being there, and he became an instant fixation to Daddy Carroll. And it went deeper and deeper as the scene progressed. And he grabs the edges of his Baroque red and gold robe and he says, "And now you can wash Daddy Carroll." Daddy Carroll dressed to the nines all the time. And that was like a shield, a suit of armor that protected him, that immaculate perfection that he pursued and found in River's character, Mike. Daddy Carroll didn't have a lot of intimacy, really, in his life. But the beauty, the magic, the spirit of River's character, of Mike, freed Daddy Carroll. It allowed Daddy Carroll to dance with joy, that this magic was happening to him, because magic didn't happen to him except in these kinds of situations with the rent boy.
Deep night, whispering trees above, kind night, bringing you nearer, dearer and dearer. Deep night, deep in the arms of love.
Eroticism is the inspiration for tenderness. Doors open with eroticism that lead into the room of tenderness. There is something magical about secrecy. Secrecy coming to fruition. Made everything more romantic and dramatic and exciting. It was pretty sublime.
Stars in the sky above, moonlight, light in a place of love. Night winds seem to have gone to rest brightly with love are gleaming. Come to my arms, my dear one, my sweetheart, my own. Vow that you love me always and be mine alone. Deep night, whispering trees deep in the arms of love.
Hi everyone, I'm Jessica. I'm in the UK and I'm just going to tell you what My Own Private Idaho means to me. I first saw My Own Private Idaho years ago when it was first shown really late at night on Channel 4. And I'd always loved River, I loved what he'd done with his acting career, but watching My Own Private Idaho was like a revelation. It was just like nothing I'd ever seen before. The images were painterly, the way that the costumes mixed with the storytelling, the narrative, like with the orange jacket, River's character of Mike, he actually was the salmon, that he was trying to find his home. And I think that's really what struck me, to be honest, was I'd never seen someone give that much of an emotive performance on film. The way that River just captured the essence of feeling lonely and feeling lost. And he didn't even need to say anything. There was just that look about him, wasn't there? He would look at the character of Scott and you just knew what he was thinking, and he didn't have to say anything. And back then, I remember thinking to myself, I need to write about this film. I didn't even know if that was possible back then. I didn't even know what you could do, but I knew that there was more and more to say about it. I started to watch it multiple times a day. And then eventually I was lucky enough, I went to university, and that was solely so I could write my thesis on My Own Private Idaho, which I did. And I was really, really lucky enough to have that published, which as a chapter. And now it's coming out as an academic textbook in the next couple of years, hopefully. So that's really exciting, and that absolutely changed my life because now I am a freelance writer. I write about film academically. I write about LGBTQI+ representation on screen, and that is because of My Own Private Idaho, and that is because of River. In tribute, I actually got River tattooed on my arm in his pose as Mike there, and it's the scene in the graveyard where he just looks at the character of Scott, and you know that he is so hurt, and everything is in that look. You're never going to get another film like it, you're never going to get a cast like it ever again. It was unique, it was a product of its time, and it changed my life for the better. People say to me, Jessica, do you ever talk about anything else? And you know what? I write about film academically all the time, but I always come back to My Own Private Idaho because there's always something new to discover. It can teach us things about ourselves every single day.
If you like what you've heard on this show, please don't forget to rate and subscribe. Follow us on all socials at LaunchLeft. Find everything you need at LaunchLeft.com. Have a nice day.
LaunchLeft aims to create an intentional space that highlights and empowers all artists for whom radical creativity is not a choice, but a necessity. LaunchLeft begins with music, but its ultimate aim is to launch left-of-center artists in all creative fields.